Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can discover the untold stories behind Hollywood's most unforgettable legends. Now, let's go back to the woman who wasn't just a star, she was a phenomenon. She had a smile that could stop time, hair that seemed to glow with sunlight, and a presence that made the world look twice. Farrah Fawcett wasn't just another actress, she was the heartbeat of a generation. In the 1970s, she became the definition of beauty, the symbol of independence, and the face of an era obsessed with perfection. Millions adored her. But behind that golden glow was a woman quietly breaking under the weight of her own image. By the time she appeared on The Tonight Show, Farrah wasn't just promoting another project. She was fighting for her dignity, her art, and her voice. What was meant to be a light-hearted interview turned into one of the most uncomfortable moments in television history. The audience laughed. The host looked uneasy. And Farrah's career took a turn she could never undo. To understand how it all came to that night, we have to return to where it began. To a quiet Texas home, where a small-town girl dreamed of something bigger. Farrah Lenny Fawcett was born on February 2, 1947, in Corpus Christi, Texas, a seaside town of oil rigs, church bells, and open skies. Her father, James Fawcett, worked as an oil contractor, tough, disciplined, and deeply proud. Her mother, Pauline, was a homemaker, gentle, patient, the heart of the home. Farrah was the younger of two daughters, and even as a child, she glowed. Her teachers called her polite but magnetic. When she smiled, people noticed. When she walked into a room, conversations paused. At W.B. Ray High School, she was voted most beautiful for 4 straight years, something that felt like a dream, yet quietly became her destiny and her curse. In 1965, she left home to attend the University of Texas at Austin. She started as a microbiology major, fascinated by science. But soon, her heart pulled her elsewhere, toward colors, shapes, and faces. She switched to art, chasing something more creative, more alive. Her sorority sisters would later say, when Farrah walked into a room, the temperature changed. Everyone just felt it. That same year, a photo of Farrah from a campus beauty contest made its way to Hollywood. A publicist named David Mirisch saw it and instantly knew he was looking at a star. For 2 years, he tried to convince her to come to Los Angeles. And for 2 years, she said no. Until one summer afternoon in 1968, when the Texas girl finally said yes. With her parents' blessing, she packed her bags, hugged her family goodbye, and flew west toward a city that would love her, use her, and never let her go. When Farrah landed in Los Angeles, Hollywood was already waiting. Screen Gems, the studio behind some of TV's biggest hits, offered her a contract, $350 a week, more money than she'd ever imagined. Her first jobs weren't in movies, but in commercials. She sold Noxzema face cream, Mercury Cougar cars, Ultra Bright toothpaste. She smiled for America, and America smiled back. Soon, she began landing small TV roles, The Flying Nun, I Dream of Jeannie, Harry O. Each one gave her a little more confidence, a little more exposure. It was on one of those sets that she met actor Lee Majors, the man who would become her husband and the first real connection to the Hollywood elite. By the early 1970s, Farrah Fawcett was climbing fast. She had the look everyone wanted, effortless, fresh, golden. But in 1976, one moment would turn her from rising star to legend. It happened almost by accident. A freelance photographer, Bruce McBroom, was hired to take a few casual shots of Farrah at home. No stylist. No makeup artist. Just Farrah, a red swimsuit, and natural light pouring into her backyard. When the photos came out, one image, her smiling in that fiery swimsuit, her hair tousled, her eyes gleaming, captured something no one could define but everyone could feel. That poster sold over 12 million copies, becoming the most famous pin-up in history. Overnight, Farrah Fawcett wasn't just an actress. She was America's obsession. Her face appeared on magazine covers, lunchboxes, even bedroom walls. She was the dream perfect, radiant, untouchable. But Farrah wasn't content with being a fantasy. She wanted to act, to tell stories that mattered. And soon, that ambition would lead her to Charlie's Angels. In 1976, producer Aaron Spelling cast Farrah as Jill Monroe in Charlie's Angels, a show about three beautiful private detectives working for a mysterious boss named Charlie. It was flashy, fun, and full of attitude. Audiences loved it instantly. Farrah's charm and her trademark hairstyle, that feathered wave that every woman tried to copy, made her the most recognizable face on television. Within months, she was a superstar. Her hairstyle had its own fan base. Men adored her, women admired her, and TV executives called her the most bankable woman in America. But fame has its price. The show's production schedule was grueling. Scripts were repetitive. And Farrah began to feel trapped, reduced to a pretty face in a detective costume. Her marriage to Lee Majors was unraveling, and the fame she once loved now felt like a cage. So in 1977, she did something no one expected. She walked away after just one season. The decision shocked Hollywood. ABC sued her for breach of contract. Tabloids branded her reckless and ungrateful. But Farrah stood firm. "I don't want to be a one-dimensional fantasy," she said. The legal battle dragged on for 2 years. In the end, she agreed to make a few guest appearances to settle the dispute. Ironically, her exit only made her more famous. She had done something rare, a woman defying Hollywood at its peak. But what she didn't know was that walking away from one show meant she'd have to fight every day to be taken seriously again. When Farrah Fawcett walked away from Charlie's Angels, she thought she was walking toward freedom. But Hollywood didn't forgive easily. The industry that made her a household name suddenly turned cold. To many, she wasn't brave, she was difficult. She had broken the golden rule: a beautiful woman wasn't supposed to take control. Farrah's first step after leaving Charlie's Angels was a romantic comedy called Somebody Killed Her Husband in 1978. It should have been her big film debut, a chance to prove herself on the big screen. But critics were brutal. They mocked both the film and her performance. One review famously sneered, "Somebody killed her career." Still, Farrah didn't give up. She took on 2 more films, Sunburn in 1979 and Saturn III in 1980, but neither won over critics or audiences. Hollywood began whispering that she couldn't act. That she was just a poster girl trying to be an artist. But Farrah was tougher than anyone realized. She refused to let herself fade into nostalgia. In 1981, she joined the ensemble cast of the Cannonball Run, a wild, comedic road film filled with stars like Burt Reynolds and Roger Moore. It became a box office hit, reminding audiences why they loved her. But inside, Farrah knew that fame without respect meant nothing. She wanted something deeper, something that would silence every critic who doubted her. So, she did what few Hollywood stars ever dared to do: she left the cameras behind and stepped onto a live stage. In 1983, Farrah took on the lead role in Extremities, an off-Broadway play that pushed every emotional boundary. It told the story of a woman who turns the tables on the man who attacks her. It was raw, violent, emotional, devastating. Every night, Farrah gave everything she had. She screamed. She fought. She broke down in front of live audiences. And for the first time, critics didn't see the poster girl. They saw an actress. Reviewers called her performance fearless and transformative. The New York Times wrote that Farrah Fawcett had finally proven she was more than a pretty face. But the show's realism came with a cost. One night, as she performed, a man in the audience shouted her name. Security pulled him out. He was a stalker who had been following her for months. Farrah was shaken, but she finished the show. That night, she realized something chilling: fame wasn't just admiration anymore. It was danger. In 1984, Farrah took on a role that would change everything again. The film was The Burning Bed, based on the true story of Francine Hughes, a woman who killed her abusive husband after years of violence. It was risky. Television movies weren't supposed to be that raw, that real. But Farrah didn't hesitate. She poured herself into the role, studying victims of domestic abuse, speaking with survivors, and revisiting her own emotional scars. When The Burning Bed aired on NBC, the country stopped to watch. It wasn't just a movie, it was a message. It opened conversations about domestic violence across America, sparking calls to reform laws and protect victims. Farrah Fawcett earned her first Emmy nomination, and more importantly, respect. She had finally broken free from the image Hollywood had built around her. She was no longer just a symbol of beauty, she was a voice for pain, strength, and justice. But with every triumph came another test. And the next one would unfold under the harshest light of all, live television. The night that changed everything. By the late 1980s, Farrah Fawcett had rebuilt herself. She was respected, admired, and finally being taken seriously. But fame, as always, has a cruel memory. It circles back and sometimes, it devours you. Farrah was invited to appear on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, the most watched late-night show in America. It was supposed to be a friendly conversation, a little laughter, some charm. A way to show that the Golden Girl was still glowing. But when the cameras rolled, something felt off. Farrah walked onto the stage smiling, but her energy was strange, distracted, almost fragile. Her sentences looped. Her thoughts drifted. At one point, she looked past Carson and said, in awe, "Oh, that looks just like New York out there." She was staring at the painted backdrop, not a window. The audience laughed nervously. Johnny Carson's grin stiffened. No one knew what to do. Farrah kept trying to steer the conversation toward her art and independence, but the more she talked, the more confused the room became. Some viewers thought she was drunk. Others said she looked lost, or worse, broken. By the next morning, tabloids exploded with headlines. Farrah Fawcett falls apart on live TV. Unhinged angel. Hollywood's fallen star. NBC never officially banned her, but she was quietly blacklisted. The Tonight Show never invited her back. That single interview haunted her for years. In later interviews, Farrah explained she had been nervous, jet-lagged, and exhausted from traveling. She thought she was being funny, spontaneous, but it didn't translate that way on camera. It didn't matter. The damage was done. The same media that once worshipped her now laughed at her. They took her vulnerability and turned it into entertainment. For Farrah, it was a heartbreak she could never fully escape. Behind the cameras, Farrah's personal life was equally turbulent. After her divorce from Lee Majors in 1979, she found herself drawn to another Hollywood icon, Ryan O'Neal. They met when both were at the height of fame, and the connection was instant. They were glamorous, passionate, and often explosive. Together, they were Hollywood's golden couple, beautiful and chaotic. In 1985, they welcomed their son, Redmond James Fawcett O'Neal. To the world, they seemed picture perfect. But behind closed doors, life was far from calm. Friends described their relationship as unpredictable, laughter 1 minute, shouting the next. Tatum O'Neal, Ryan's daughter, would later claim she saw her father being violent toward Farrah, something Ryan always denied. Whether true or not, the rumors painted a painful picture, love mixed with volatility, affection tangled with fear. Still, Farrah defended him. Perhaps she saw in Ryan a mirror of herself, a flawed soul trying to hold on to something real. By the late 1990s, their relationship fell apart. Ryan struggled with addiction. Farrah withdrew, looking for peace. For a brief time, she dated Canadian filmmaker James Orr, but that too ended in tragedy when Orr was arrested for assaulting her in 1998. After that, she retreated from the public eye. The world still saw the glamorous blonde from the posters, but inside, she was a survivor, bruised, but not broken. That same year, she quietly reconnected with her college sweetheart, Greg Lott, the man who knew her before Hollywood. He claimed they remained close until her final days, though controversy would later surround that claim. For Farrah, love had always been a battlefield, passionate, painful, and deeply human. By the time the 1990s came to an end, Farrah Fawcett had lived 1,000 lives. America's sweetheart. Hollywood's rebel. Television's survivor. She had fought for her name, her dignity, and her craft, and in the process, she'd become something rare in Hollywood, a woman who didn't fake her truth. But her greatest battle was still waiting, one that no fame, no beauty, and no strength could shield her from. In 2006, the call came. Farrah had been feeling unwell, tired, weak, in pain. Doctors gave her the news she never expected to hear. Anal cancer. For anyone, the word cancer changes everything. But for Farrah, it wasn't just a medical diagnosis, it was a challenge to her spirit. She refused to surrender. She began chemotherapy and radiation immediately. She smiled for cameras, but behind closed doors, she faced a silent storm of pain. Her longtime partner, Ryan O'Neal, stood by her side once again. Their relationship had been through chaos and heartbreak, but now, in the face of death, they found each other again. Ryan became her caretaker, her voice when she couldn't speak, her protector when the world wanted too much. Farrah's friends said she faced treatment with the same energy she once brought to her performances, determined, defiant, and radiant even in exhaustion. "I don't want to die of this," she told a friend. "I want to live through it." In 2007, the cancer returned, more aggressive, spreading to her liver. But Farrah did something few people would ever dare. She decided to film her journey. Together with her close friend Alana Stewart, she began documenting everything, every treatment, every hospital visit, every treatment, every hospital visit, every tear. The footage wasn't polished or staged. It was raw, painful, real. She wanted people to see what cancer really looked like, the fear, the fight, and the faith it demanded. The project became Farrah's Story, a 2-hour NBC documentary that aired in May 2009. 9 million people watched. They saw a woman stripped of makeup and glamour, bald from chemotherapy, yet glowing with courage. They saw her laugh through pain, cry through hope, and fight through exhaustion. It wasn't vanity, it was bravery. The same woman once mocked for her vulnerability on live television now showed the world her rawest truth, and the world listened. Farrah's Story earned critical acclaim and an Emmy nomination. It gave strength to millions battling cancer. And it reminded everyone that Farrah Fawcett was not a fallen star, she was a fighter. By early 2009, her condition had worsened. The treatments had taken their toll, and Farrah began to spend more time in her home, surrounded by her artwork, her friends, and Ryan. She still smiled for visitors, still cracked jokes, still believed in miracles. Ryan stayed close, sleeping beside her hospital bed. He later said, "She never once complained. Not once. She was the bravest person I'd ever met." Her son, Redmond, was struggling with addiction and serving time in jail. It broke her heart, but she never stopped loving him. She requested permission for him to visit her one last time, and when he did, it was under guard, shackled at the wrists. It was an image that captured the tragedy of her life, beauty and pain, love and loss, side by side. On June 25, 2009, Farrah Fawcett passed away at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica. She was 62 years old. Ryan O'Neal and Alana Stewart were by her side. Her death made headlines across the world for few short hours. Because that same afternoon, another shock hit the world: Michael Jackson had died. The king of pop's death dominated every news outlet, pushing Farrah's farewell to the background. Her fans mourned not only her passing, but the cruel timing, the silence that followed the woman who once made the whole world look her way. Farrah Fawcett's story didn't end with her death. In some ways, it was just beginning. Her passing reopened questions about fame, respect, and how easily women in Hollywood were forgotten once they stopped being perfect. A year later, in 2010, at the Academy Awards, the world noticed something shocking. Farrah Fawcett, one of the most famous women of her time, was left out of the In Memoriam tribute. The decision caused outrage. Fans flooded social media, furious that the woman who defined television and film in the 1970s wasn't honored. Bruce Davis, the Academy's executive director, later defended the omission, saying her most important work was on television. But to millions, that explanation felt hollow, a final insult from the same industry she had fought to prove herself in. Her family called the omission deeply saddening. To them, it wasn't about awards, it was about respect. Farrah had spent her entire career breaking barriers between film and television, and now, even in death, Hollywood tried to separate her from its own history. After her death, Farrah's legacy became the subject of legal battles. Her will left $4.5 million in trust for her son, Redmond, a way to protect him even in his struggles. She left $100,000 to Greg Lott, her college sweetheart. And she donated her entire art collection to the University of Texas, her alma mater. But controversy followed even here. Among her possessions was a Warhol portrait of herself, a piece worth millions. When it disappeared, a bitter legal fight erupted between the university and Ryan O'Neal. Ryan claimed she had given it to him personally. The university argued it was part of her collection. In 2013, a Los Angeles court sided with Ryan. He kept the painting. It was a small victory for him and a sad reminder that even after her death, Farrah's world was still full of chaos and conflict. Today, decades after her rise, Farrah Fawcett remains one of the most recognizable faces in American culture. Her red swimsuit, that effortless smile, became more than an image. It became a symbol of an era. The suit itself now sits in the Smithsonian Museum, preserved as a piece of American history. But her true legacy isn't hanging on a wall. It's in the conversations her courage started. The burning bed became mandatory viewing for discussions about domestic abuse. Her performances inspired a generation of actresses to demand better roles. And her final act, turning her own illness into a public story of resilience, gave strength to millions fighting cancer. Farrah Fawcett wasn't just a face. She was a voice. She was a reminder that perfection is a performance and truth is power. When Farrah Fawcett left Texas for Hollywood, she didn't chase fame, she chased possibility. She wanted to paint, to act, to create beauty that meant something. She became the face of a generation, the poster on every wall, the hair every woman copied, the dream every man imagined. But she paid for that image with her freedom. For every magazine cover, there was a headline that mocked her. For every smile, there was a private battle no one saw. Still, she never stopped fighting. From Charlie's Angels to the burning bed, from the red swimsuit to the hospital gown, Farrah Fawcett lived her life on her own terms, brave, imperfect, and unforgettable. She once said, "God gave women intuition and femininity. Used properly, it can jolt a man as much as lightning." But her real lightning wasn't her beauty, it was her defiance. Her refusal to be silent. Her choice to show the world who she really was, even when it laughed. Farrah Fawcett's story is more than fame and failure. It's about the price of being real in a world obsessed with illusion. She broke rules. She broke hearts. And in the end, she broke free. Studio microphone. So what do you remember most about Farrah Fawcett? Her golden smile? Her courage to walk away? Or the way she faced her final days with grace and fire? Tell us in the comments. And if you believe her story still matters, hit like, share this video, and subscribe for more untold Hollywood stories. Because legends like Farrah Fawcett remind us, beauty may fade, but courage never does.